the room right now, starting and start letting people in the room.
Great. And then we want to wait till Jivy gets here to start the whole thing, or what do you think? When do you want me to kick it off?
Maybe give her. I think we can start without her because she'll probably get in after the whole introduction part.
Perfect.
I'll give her
I'll
a little
buy
bit
her.
extra time.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay, we have everybody. Oh, so Dana, did you want to start?
Sure.
Oh,
Sorry. Just get
that's okay.
awesome. Okay. Welcome, everybody. So we are so happy you could join us today for our AI chatbot panel discussion. So my name is Dana Mason, and I work with Nedla. And we're just going to kick it off with a few brief announcements just to let you know a few things that are happening with our organization, and then we'll get started pretty quickly. So today is the second session in a series of 4 where we have some fantastic panelists who are joining us tonight to share their expertise from their really interesting fields based on AI chatbot stuff. So as we talk about this, each session that we have is going to focus on Monday was strengths, today is weaknesses, and towards the end of the month we have 2 other sessions as well we'll be getting to. Whoops. So here we go. So welcome. A little bit about our organization. NEDLA stands for Northeast Digital Learning Association. So if you're brand new with our group, welcome. We're so happy you could join us. We are a local chapter of the USDLA Digital Learning Association. So we've been in operation for over 25 years, and NEDLA is a registered nonprofit 501c3 organization. So feel free to join us on LinkedIn or Facebook. We have some groups there that you can interact with and get some of the updates of the great things that we have going on. And also you can visit our website at nedla.org. So our upcoming events, we have the other 2 from this particular session or this particular series. It's going to be on April 24th and 27th for the AI chatbot panel discussion. And for that, you could register. And for any of our events, you could register at nedla.org. This is going to focus on, since it's a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses were this week. And so we have opportunities and threats that we'll be talking about the next time. And our May webinar is going to focus on some really cool stuff. I'll get into that on the next slide, but Kelly Pribble from Iron Mountain is going to be featured talking about history and the history of audio engineering and restoration, some really amazing things with the work he's doing. We also have a summer K-12 PD that's going to be coming up. That's going to be a PD conference on June 22nd, so keep an eye out for that. And of course, if you have any K-12 educators that you're friends with or in your family or in somewhere that you work with, please feel free to pass along the information. We also have an upcoming annual NEDLA conference and some sponsorship opportunities, as well as monthly webinars you can keep an eye out for throughout the year. So this is going to be the May 4th, 7 p.m. session, 21st Century Innovation in Audio Engineering Restoration. And Kelly Pribble is a fantastic audio engineer. He's created many different studios all around the world, including Nashville, Rio, England, and New York City. He's currently the director of Media Recovery Technology Program, which is the division that he works with in audio archiving and engineering at Iron Mountain. And he's also an inventor. So when things start to disintegrate and certain types of older digital media, we're finding there's all these different things that are happening with the old technology. So he's come up with all these patented ideas on how to restore things and create new ways to preserve the old. So it's going to be a fascinating technology talk that first week. So please feel free to join us. We're going to have information about that to register on our website probably in the next day or so. And our NEDLA membership is a fantastic way to stay involved with our organization as well. Some of the benefits to membership include events that you have free access to any of our annual events, including our conferences. You have recorded events that you can have access to. Professional development opportunities are constantly available with between corporate and education fields. And there's also a lot of virtual and networking that we do. And very soon, I know we weren't able to because of the pandemic, but we shortly will be bringing back some face-to-face networking opportunities as well. There are going to be a members only forum that we're announcing very soon as well. So you'll be able to keep in touch with people and be able to connect even when you're not in more of a face-to-face setting. We will be releasing a newsletter, and you'll have sponsorship opportunities as well as professional development opportunities as well. So if you have questions about that, please feel free to let us know, and you can check our website for more information. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our fantastic moderator, Rodney Murray, and he is going to be our facilitator for today. He was here for being the moderator for our Monday night session as well. So Rod, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you take it away for the next portion.
Thank you, Dana. Let me share my screen. Okay, hopefully you see my screen there. So welcome to our discussion on AI chatbots, and we're concentrating on weaknesses this time. And to introduce myself, you may already know I'm the Director of Technology for NEDLA. I've been with NEDLA for quite some time. I'm currently the producer of Rod's Pulse podcast, which is also on Inside Higher Ed as The Pulse. I interview EdTech leaders. And I'm also the author of a newsletter, which is my latest labor of love. I talk about all kinds of good technologies that are going to help us live a long life. And lately, I've been mixing in some ChatGPT and having ChatGPT help me with my newsletter. So check it out. Whoops, I did the wrong button here. Wait a second. Okay, so some of you were here on Monday. You may have seen this little graphic. I thought it was fun to give a prompt to DALL-E. And I said, universities, students in a lecture hall see a modern robot lecturing to them at a podium at the front of the room. But either my prompts are not very good, or DALL-E just wasn't up to the task. The one I picked to highlight had no podium. But at least it's better than the instructor having its back to the audience. Or you can see the picture on the lower right. Looks like a giant was in front of the room. So I tried to do it again with a different technology, but the two that I tried weren't available. You know, all these AI apps are getting inundated with the users, and I don't think they're up to the task, and they're starting to charge to get access. So that's the way it's going. So first, I'd like to introduce our panelists today. I'm not going to read this, but just to say that I've known Bobby for quite a few years, and she's a very successful author and speaker, and has important positions at Cedar Crest, American University, and at LaSalle University. So Bobby, why don't you take it over and give an introduction to yourself.
Hi there, folks. I'm Bobby Baggio. I've been interested in technology and learning since somewhere in the late 90s. My first life was in IT, but when I found this marriage with technologies and learning, I knew right then and there that's why I was here. My latest book is AI at Work, which is all about AI, and I actually started that in like 2017, published it last year. And the whole message is this is happening, and it's happening fast. And I think we're seeing that speed coming out of the pandemic, like even faster than fast. You know, so I'm excited to talk to you all today. I hope we have a good discussion. It's something that I look at as opportunity. I don't look at it as something we should be afraid of. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to move education forward.
Great. Thank you, Bobby.
Yep.
Next, we have Mattia Marquardt, who is Assistant Dean at Columbia University School of Social Work. So Mattia, why don't you give us an introduction to yourself?
Thank you so much, Rod. Well, I really enjoyed the conversation on Monday. This panel is so fun and the questions are so great. And I hope folks will interact in the chat because it's just so interesting to have this interdisciplinary focus. I'm a social worker and I've been working in education for a long time. And I've also been working in online education or social work tech and nonprofit tech for a long time. So seeing ChatGPT and the other AI chatbots coming up has been really interesting and something that I could just talk about forever, it seems like. So thank you for having me here.
Thanks, Mattia. And now we have Susan Suarez, who's a high school English and language arts teacher at Baltimore County, Maryland. So Susan, why don't you give us your elevator speech?
Sure, thank you. I'd also like to just echo that it was a wonderful time on Monday. This is a really exciting topic. And yes, this is really so relevant. And it is just, things are just going really, really quickly. And we'll just continue to kind of rush through and see what the new technologies, new forms of AI are. I've been in education for about 20 years. And prior to that, I was a mainframe computer programmer, which is nice that I've always had kind of like this love for technology. And so for my dissertation, I wanted to study AI chat in first year English composition courses, just to see how it can actually help support students, particularly first gen students. And so I'm excited to be here and continue with these conversations. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Susan. And G. Mick Smith. Mick, Doctor of Digital. Tell everybody a little bit about your background.
Well, that is my nom de plume. So around 1994, I got interested in technology because during the 1980s, I apologized to all computer people. I said, oh, this whole computer thing is not going to work. They break down. They're unreliable, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I had a little egg on my face. So about 1994, I realized that with both education and technology, this is the way to go on the internet. So I started putting up distance learning courses, then saw how to work with startups and businesses as well along the line. So I've seen the ups and downs, and that's helpful because I am a historian. I think that helps to be analyzing companies and businesses. So some recent projects I've been working on with Amplify Labs, they do ML and they do artificial intelligence when it comes down to using Keepsake Tales. It's kind of an interesting program where a child can see themselves as maybe Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz or things like that. So really helpful for a student to see themselves as a person who can grow and also can learn. Also do some back end things that are large scale. So that has to do with class ranked, also with Amplify Labs. So if you're looking in front end or back end, a lot of things I can help out with, and more than happy to. Very exciting. I'm not a programmer. So what I always approach to technology, I tell everybody the same thing. I try to break things. I go, well, I'm trying to break things because I'm trying to learn how the things work. So that this is appropriate panel to be on, the weaknesses of ChatGPT and things like that. Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate the time.
Very good, Mick. And last but not least, we have Shivi Williams. So Shivi's at Rowan Community College and Distance Education Department as an instructional designer. I have a fond place in my heart for instructional designers. They are so wonderful. So Shivi, why don't you give us some of your background?
Sure. I have also been in education for about 20 years. And I'm really excited about this topic because it's interesting to see how AI, because of ChatGPT, has kind of affected education. And so I love that I can have this conversation with other people and from other areas, and also to bring this back to our college. We are having a summer institute shortly, in a couple of weeks, and AI is definitely one of the topics of the college, and how, some people are for and then some people are against. So it's very interesting to hear the conversations that are happening. So I am excited to continue to be a part of this panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to get to the questions. I'm going to show the question on the screen for some time. And then I'll stop sharing once our conversations gets going. And just like we did on Monday, I'm just going to, in order to kick things off, let me go to the top of the panelist list again and ask Bobby if she wouldn't mind kicking this off. What are the potential risks and limitations of using AI chatbots like ChatGPT in education settings?
Well, yeah, I think, there's a legal risk to start with. We have laws that govern security and the privacy of information. We have laws. Let's just start with FERPA. I mean, that's a pretty simple one and a pretty basic one. And you have to remember that, whatever you're using AI, whatever the background system is, it's recording everything that you say. And when you get to minors, it gets even more complicated. I would seriously think if I were using it in my classroom, I would have parents sign a release that they know that this is going on, just to basically protect yourself. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. So there's the legal aspect of using it. There's a security aspect of using it. Until we have audits and transparency on these systems and we know what's going on and we can trust the information and we know that there's not somebody in the background manipulating it that we don't know, we're in a blind spot. We're kind of in a place where we're forced to say, oh, well, we trust Amazon. Really? We trust Google. Really? We kind of learned the hard way with the internet and big data that maybe totally blind trust is not the greatest idea out there. So there's that aspect to it. And then, there's also the aspect of false information. There's no guarantee that what these systems are delivering is true, is real, is relevant, we've got lots of examples of, so there's a whole list. There's an equity list. There's this idea of, this is all natural language based, and language is different for all human beings. Language in different states, language in different ethnicities, in different levels in society. So what you can access out of it is different depending on who you are. There's a whole list, Rod. I could go on for a long time, but I'll give you the intro, and then other people can jump in.
Sure, please jump in. While you're thinking, it just reminded me, I think on Monday, I said, I asked in one conversation I had with GPT-4, I said, well, I'm giving you some information now. Are you putting this into your database, And GPT said, no, we're not doing that. But then later, I think the next day, I saw evidence that maybe not that particular system, but others definitely do. You've seen the news, that information has leaked out, right? Confidential information from some companies have leaked out because they were using ChatGPT or some other product.
Yep.
So I want to say that I know one of the things that our English department is definitely battling here is there is no way to tell if a student uses ChatGPT or any other AI to basically write papers, right? So there's this plagiarism side of things where there's no way to tell if something has been plagiarized by a student. Of course, an instructor could possibly, if the student's writing style, could possibly say something. But I think at our college, when it came up, it was basically said, like, you have to have solid proof. And just because you think the writing style is different, right, that's not enough proof that warrants for a student to be reprimanded for plagiarizing something. So there's that side of it, at least from, from our college, and a lot of, I think, instructors, depending on who they are concerned about.
To piggyback off of that, in early February, the New York Times had some students read one of their articles on ChatGPT, and I'm not sure actually if the students actually used it at the time too, but what they asked the students, like what their opinion was, and the students worried that ChatGPT would rob them of motivation, rob them of creativity, critical thinking, and others thought that it would definitely lead to widespread cheating. And these concerns are coming from students themselves. So they know their own weaknesses and they know their own vulnerabilities. So I think that's really an area of concern, how to kind of not make the mind lazy when something else can do it for you.
I could jump in. I'm lazy when it comes to maps. So I'm one of those people from the generation that I love maps. I was a Boy Scout and I knew frontwards and backwards everywhere to go. But unfortunately, the iPhone has killed all that because I just plug it in and I follow along. And if it tells me to turn left, I turn left and try not to go into water and things like that. But there is a certain amount of laziness. But Bobby gave a really good overview of certain points that when, for example, you go and you tell ChatGPT to do something every time you go into a browser and every time you start a session, it's also recording that because it's asking you, are you a real person or are you a robot? Well, when I tell it's not a robot, it's just collected all that information. And so part of that is out there. I also want to address just the informational point. So whenever students are looking for material, and I noticed this when I had students write papers, and I said, did you notice some of the abbreviations at the bottom of the source you took from? And they said, no. And I said, well, what you're actually quoting from is communist Chinese propaganda. And you can tell that because they've listed it. And you really want to try to avoid that. That may not be an objective source. The problem with ChatGPT or any kind of AI currently is that whatever is out there is out there. And I still think you have to take that human component to it to go through it and make sure that it has a credible source and what those sources are, because it's all out there and it's just pulling it all in.
And to add to that, I think not only do students find it difficult to find the sources, but sometimes they're believing ChatGPT or AI chatbots over real sources because the AI chatbots sound so authoritative. They don't say, an expert will say, well, in this case, yes, and there's subtleties and et cetera. And students read that as, oh, this expert doesn't know what they're talking about compared to this AI chatbot, which gave me a very definitive answer and obviously knows more about it. Or because they're not human, they know more about it. They're just assigning more credibility to the chatbot over real experts who know about subtleties and things like that.
There's a point I just wanted to go in real quickly. I had a best buddy of mine who would say, you're quoting from Marx and Mao and, George Washington, all these people, and how come you're not original? I'm saying, well, what I'm trying to do, obviously, is an academic, and I'm trying to show that I know all the sides of it. It's not that I'm not creative and I'm not authoritative, but I'm actually knowing the sources. And that was one of the things he said, well, you don't sound very authoritative because nothing is your own idea. Well, you have to show both sides, and that's the academic pursuit.
Good point. I think everybody's had a chance. Should we move on to question 2? Let me share my screen again. And I'll leave this up for a few moments. So, in what ways can these technologies hinder student learning and engagement or reinforce existing inequalities and biases in the classroom? So please, anybody just chime right in.
I think Susan, I think that's her name. I'm sorry, because I can't see everybody's names again, but
Yes.
I think one of the things that she mentioned, is that right? Yes. Okay. So one of the things that she mentioned was the piece about like students, that there's this piece that students don't get to be authentic in their writing, right? There's no emotion included in the writing, right, anymore. So students aren't able to, if they use it, they're not able to really express truly how they feel, add their own emotions to whatever the topic is, add their own personal experiences. And I think that's important. And just the fact that students feel that way is also important. Not everybody is trying it. Not everybody wants to use the software or use the program to write, but I think that is a very valid point, is that they don't get that opportunity to really go in, think about whatever the topic is, and then add to the topic their own personal experience.
I think that another source of inequality is kind of what Shivi was talking about earlier, where now instructors are thinking about plagiarism and trying to assess which students might be having an AI help with their paper. I was reading on social media about a student who had written their own paper, but they were accused by their instructor of not having written their own paper. And so that level of suspicion that's kind of being created, and the student was devastated by the accusation. It really broke their trust and their comfort with that faculty member. They felt like they were being treated with suspicion. And that's something that in the US disproportionately impacts students of color. Students of color are treated with more suspicion, and they're disproportionately punished. So that's something that ChatGPT could be setting up another way to recreate the suspicion and the punishment.
There was a day when we didn't have ChatGPT, and some of us many years ago, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth, we did research. And I had a professor that I really didn't care for, and I objected to what was being presented in the classroom. And I turned in a report and plunked it down on the desk, and it was about 30 pages. They had asked for about 6, and shocked and horrified. And they accused me of that very thing. They said, "You're plagiarized." So I took it to another professor and said, "What do you think? Is there a plagiarism here?" And he said, "No, absolutely not." And so I went back to the original professor, and I had gotten an A on the paper, which is kind of strange. If I had plagiarized, I shouldn't be getting an A, and I asked for an F. And then the professor was shocked as well too. But what happened was, I had a conversation with the individual and said that, yes, with all the ease of research that we have now, that was not possible in the old days. And I think what you want to get across to students is that if you really believe in something and you're passionate about it, then do the groundwork that's necessary and overcome whatever limitations you have. And I think the tendency on these AI tools is that it almost makes things too easy. And if you take the easy road, that's not the best road to take. So do the research, keep at it, and that will bring an inequity in the system, because if people have easy access, and if people have it, they'll take the easy road. And that's not something that you want. I don't think it's helpful for education. So live and learn.
And I would take it one step further, Mick. I would take it to the point that set the assignment up so that it's an authentic assignment. Why do we write research papers? Where does this come from? This is what I see as a benefit of AI, is it has the weight and the ability to change how we look at education and how and why we do what we do. I mean, research papers date back to the Dewey Decimal System. They date back to libraries and shelves full of books and spending days there. Some of us are old enough to remember that. And rooting through stuff and bringing stuff together to correlate different ideas, and then boom, we got the internet in 1995, and we had access to information in a different way. And this to me is the same kind of thing. It's access to that information in a different way. we still need to discern that information. Is it valid? Is it good? Is it true? Is it worth it? Does it fit into what we're trying to do here? So, my 2 cents worth on that is, I think if we're talking about the risks to populations that are underserved, I think the one of the risks is the fact that it's language representation to begin with. And those people, I'm going to use an example that goes back many moons. Language for Learning was a product by McGraw-Hill. And what they proved was that middle-class kids had about 1,400 words, elementary school kids had about 1,400 words a day that they heard, where lower income children only heard about 600 or 700 words a day. So there was a big difference in the reading. There was a big difference in the vocabulary. Now kind of put that on steroids and look at AI. You kind of have the same disparity, only more so. I do think there are opportunities there for us to use AI to help bring up that vocabulary exposure, to help bring up reading levels. I mean, that's one thing. Fast Forward has proven that you can jump kids' reading levels with AI pretty far, pretty fast. But if you don't have the right intentions and configurations, you could leave those people behind, which we don't want to do. That's not good.
Yeah, good point. It occurred to me that this is just in its infancy, and the particularly tech savvy students, the ones that have the gaming machines at home, they have great internet connection, they have the patience to figure this out and try one of the hundreds of AI programs out there. I'm
Right.
sure that leaves out a lot of kids that just don't have the knowledge. And until it becomes more embedded in the Microsoft products, which they're about to do, and even in Google search, some kids are going to be left behind.
And I think also when it does become more available to more of the kids, we have to worry about the bias of like, where's the machine learning taking place? What are the different sources? And is that then coming from the dominant culture? And is that what we're just perpetuating, that this is the right way, this is the correct way, and kind of limits the thinking? So as AI becomes more and more intelligent, it's becoming, what are those sources? It's becoming intelligent in one specific, setting.
I was going to say, also piggybacking off of that, Dr. Mick had said something on Monday about bias. And this kind of stuck with me, which was, it depends on who you're talking to, right? The bias that shows up, it depends on who the person is. And so, so one person can put something in and they don't see bias, but somebody else can put the exact same thing in and then see the bias showing up, depending on who the person is. I think it's also interesting, since there's so much data out there now, and especially what's going on with education, and we want to eliminate certain things in education, certain books and certain language and certain words, how that now will show up on ChatGPT, right? My mom sent me an article saying that they wanted to remove the race of Rosa Parks from a book, right? So now it makes me think about, so if these things are a part of this overall system, pulling all this information from different places, what information are our students going to get? And now we're not just talking about college students, right? We're talking about grammar age students, and our middle school, and in high school, and then our PhD students. So we're talking about a wide range of students, where, again, as everybody else said, some of this information is going to be false or from the predominant culture. So, but I just wanted to say that was one thing that I did remember that he said, was that the bias depends on who the person is.
How true. Unless somebody else wants to jump in, I'm going to switch to the next question. Let me share my screen again. And I think we're up to question 3, which is coming up. Oh, whoops, how do I do that? 3. How can educators and administrators ensure that AI chatbots are designed and implemented in ways that support student success and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion? There's certainly overlap in what we've been talking about, but let's look at how educators and administrators can help chatbots be designed properly. Anybody want to jump in on that before I remove the question from the screen?
I'm stumped because I'm not really sure how they can ensure that they're designed and implemented a certain way. I mean, there could be, sort of requests made, but because they're not the designers and generally don't get involved on that level, the only thing would be buying power and then just
Yes.
choosing AI chatbots, which would be more beneficial, which are somehow proved to be more equitable.
Right. Yeah, it occurred to me that we're all jumping on ChatGPT. That's got the most press, but we don't really have a good idea for how what it's what information it's drawing on. Certainly, there are going to be other chatbots that might have a more targeted focus in terms of the recipient. This is focused towards students. I'm sure these big publishers are going to get involved. Khan Academy, as I mentioned, are already working to have a version of ChatGPT hooked into their educational products. So any other thoughts on how we could help influence that? I think, like I said, the power of the purse is important.
Well, I
That's
think the
what-
power of the purse is important. I also think, you saying no, no, we're not going to let this in unless we have some sort of certification. Until we get to the point with AI that we demand transparency and we demand review of the algorithms. I mean, we're also assuming that these algorithms make sense and that they're right and that there's no regression to the mean and that we're looking at we don't know any of this stuff, and nobody knows, like a black box, and that just like compounds the problem. At some point in time, we're going to have some sort of agency or audit where these things are reviewed, and then you get a stamp that says, yes, this information is real, it's true. We know how the algorithm is configured, we know what's happening over time, and we know blah, 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 blah. Boom, the AI Association gives it 5 gold stars. You can trust it. We don't have that now. We don't even have a definition of what AI is that works. We call a lot of things out there AI, which is really IA, information automation. It's not artificial intelligence. That's not what it is, but it sells. So we've put that label on it. So
I imagine us having the battle of the bots. So if you remember, there was a toy some years ago, I think it was the 80s, where they had the robots out there, trying to duke it out. So we might have the battle of the bots, and maybe we can envision having a peer-reviewed bot. So clearly there's a market forces that are at work. The bigger players are going to be in there. They have the money, the resources, and what have you. And like we're saying, we're talking about ChatGPT, but there's others out there already. And people are starting to say, well, yeah, this is the one that got all the news media and the attention, but that's certainly by no means the only one that's out there. But maybe at some point we can have something which is more credible, a certification or something along those lines, maybe a peer-reviewed ChatGPT or an AI.
I think related to the power of the purse and doing reviews, As Susan said, we're not necessarily involved in the design level, but a lot of companies are responsive to reviews or social media commentary. So we could be vocal, and that could be a way to influence, even if we're not directly involved in design. Because it does seem like, in particular, ChatGPT released a new version recently and has been kind of improving based on complaints that have come up in social media. So I know, for example, it'll make up references like journal articles that sound great but don't exist. And recently when I asked it for references, it only gave me they didn't give me any journals, only publicly available websites. So I could click on the links, and I think that was in response to the negative feedback it's been getting.
Quick example, that happens with real people too, because I forget the exact name and the journal and what have you, but there was an academic who said, I'm going to create something, and it was a false journal. It was a false peer-reviewed article. It was completely bogus, and yet it got accepted. So it is possible to fool even the best and the most intelligent around us. So it's just to be on guard for AI. It can do that. If a human being can do it, AI can do it.
Good points. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just put real quickly a thing in chat from Chatbot magazine on hybrid era of customer support. And I could see the same thing happening with learning support. I really can. I mean, I can see us using bots to support the learning process down the line, and really doing what Matthias said, having teachers involved in the development and in the, so all is not lost.
True. I was watching a video of Jeffrey, I forget his last name, considered the father of AI, and he was talking about how, like Bobby was saying, not everything we see is really artificial intelligence. There are really two different paths that they went down. One is more rule based, sort of, if then algorithms and the rest, and that's not been as successful as ChatGPT, which is based on neural networks. It's mimicking the human brain. I always think back when I first heard about neural networks, how when they were taught to speak, the initial output sounded like a human baby, which I thought was pretty amazing. But yeah, there's a lot we don't know. The other thing I was going to mention is that, bots train bots. That's, so I can envision a bot that was trained in a way to identify material that would be, not allowed at, the grade school level, for example, or something like that. So there are a lot of possibilities out there. In fact, now that even these companies have humans that do something like that. They have there's a mnemonic for it. I forget what it is offhand, but they basically reward the bot for truth and give them a punishment for for untruth, and try to train them that way. It's pretty crazy. Anybody else before we move on? All right, let me go to the next question. Okay, how can the weaknesses of AI chatbots like ChatGPT be addressed to improve their effectiveness and relevance in education? I think we pretty well covered this, but let me stop sharing and see if that brings up any other thoughts we want to add to that.
I'd be in favor of standards and high standards. And by that, I mean, if you're looking at any AI, ChatGPT or BT or something along those lines, it's really getting an average of information. And what I mean by that is there's a whole range that's out there. So there are going to be excellent sources out there. There are really poor sources out there. But when it comes back at you in answer to a question, you've sort of got the average. So I think the human component, in order to improve, is to have a standard of excellence which is much higher and much greater than simply aggregated data or aggregated information. And when it comes down to education, the critical thinking component is going to be the human component. And I think there's where the educators come in. We need to be saying things like, well, yes, it's something like a Google search, but you still have to wade through all this information. Okay, you got an answer from ChatGPT, but you now have to apply yourself. And I think the educational component is to strive for excellence. And this comes back again, the background. It's like the Greeks, the Romans. I mean, you start comparing who is better, who is greater. Some people in the past have achieved excellence and first-rate abilities. And I think this is what we were trying to always get students to do, set a higher standard than what you're finding, that just everything that's out there, because that's all it's really doing.
I also think it's a great opportunity for instructors to show their students the weaknesses of any AI product, right? Here, either you can do a test in class, or maybe you already have gone through, maybe you've looked at how incorrect data or has been brought back, and then you use those examples in class to show it the weaknesses of any AI. So, but I also agree. I think there should also be some kind of standard, right? So, but I think that's one way, at least when you are bringing it back to education and to any level of students, here are some weaknesses. And if you're going to use it, be aware of the information that may come back. And this is why that information may be false, with showing them examples of that.
A practical example. I am retro in one or two things. I drive a stick shift. I love stick shifts. I know how to use a stick shift, but I really saw last week there was a example of some thieves who tried to steal a car, and it was a stick shift. They couldn't drive it. So my analogy here is, well, that's what we should be doing. And I like the point of showing all the flaws of it, because just like it comes to driving, the reason that I would argue that a person who drives a stick shift is a better driver is because, for one thing, we're paying attention. We have to pay attention because we have to know what gear we're in. That's up your gears, down your gears. So in the back of your mind, you're always listening to the car engine and you're always paying attention to your driving. So similarly, if we're going to use a tool, which is like a car or anything else, show the limitations of it. Yes, you can drive an automatic, but you really kind of put your mind out of gear when you should be in gear. But I like the point of just trying to show the limitations of a thing. And that's why I said my basic approach to technology, try to break it first. And I think students need to know that. And if they know that, they're less inclined to rely on it, which again, I think that's something that we don't want our students doing. Don't rely on this. You're still a human being, and you're a great example of a thinking being as opposed to a non-thinking tool.
I think it would be helpful to also kind of get a repository of where it goes wrong, so that you can understand the bias behind the technology and where does it mess up? What connections does it make? And I think that, like, kind of crowdsourcing that information so that, you can use it responsibly, but also be able to know where the weaknesses lie and hopefully make a better product too, so that, but I think being able to, like, crowdsource that information, I think would be really helpful in terms of, of getting an idea of the limitations of technology.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? I love that example about the stick shift. It reminded me of, people that don't know how to drive, never been in a Tesla, that if you want to steal a Tesla, you better know how to drive a Tesla, because it's totally, I saw a video where the latest high-end Teslas, you don't even shift into forward and reverse. It knows where you want to go. If you're in your garage, it knows you want to back out of the garage. But the guy showed he was in a parking lot, and the Tesla wanted him to drive straight, but there was a pole, with a sign on it, and the Tesla didn't see the sign. So Some of the dangers of too much technology.
And I don't know if
Uh,
it's true, but I've heard a Tesla will park a car at 10 miles an hour. 10 miles an hour, if you know how fast 10 miles an hour is, that's really, really fast. The average person walks 3 miles an
3
hour.
miles.
So that's much, much faster. I mean, that's frightening. So maybe that's why I don't drive a Tesla and I have a 6 shift.
All right, I'm going to share the screen and we'll go to the next question. And okay, what new research and development is needed to overcome the current limitations of AI chatbots in education? And what are the ethical and social implications of these advancements? I think we've already touched on some of the things that are needed, but maybe we can say more about ethical and social implications. Anybody want to kick that off?
I think that this might be a place where the tension of doing research to make improvements bumps up against privacy, because as we said earlier, AI bots are basically recording everything you say and they're kind of fine tuning their profile of you. And I've seen cases, for example, there are vendors in higher ed that will talk with students for you. And the way they target students is they record every phone conversation and then they get an AI transcript of it and then they analyze it for like creating a profile of the student. And then the next time they call, they're like, oh, you like dogs, if you take these classes, you'll have time to watch. I don't know. They focus it, or they'll focus on this kind of a student is someone who is using a lot of like heart words or feeling words. So when you talk to them, don't go for the head, go for the heart. And it's just a lot of profiling. And the more we put into these chatbots, the more they know about us. And even if you're using different companies, probably there's going to be consolidation. So they'll be buying up, the data, as you mentioned, big data earlier. So there's limited ways to protect yourself from that. And the whole time, the chatbots are going to be better and better at, selling you ads or, whatever they want to get from you, because anything that's free in particular is they're going to make money off you somehow. And that might be advertisements or something else. So there's, I guess, just a risk, like Bobby said, maybe especially with minors, having parents sign the releases if they're going to be using chatbots, never putting your address in there, trying not to put too much information in there, but also just really thinking about what are you giving up when you use these chatbots, because it's a business. There's someone trying to make money off of that.
Also, kind of what you just said reminded me of two things. But the first thing was I was watching the news this morning, which is very rare, but I was watching it and they were saying that someone used a teenager's voice to call her mom to say she was kidnapped. And the person that used, I think if I'm not mistaken, like a chat bot for that, then was saying, they wanted a ransom, like they wanted money for that, right? And so going back to the social implications, so when I heard it this morning, I was just like, oh my gosh, like what a scary point for a parent, right? Her daughter was away at camp. Someone called her with the daughter's voice saying that she was in trouble. She couldn't figure out, the mom couldn't figure out what was going on. She did figure out that her daughter was not in trouble, I think, by calling the camp, but it just is kind of scary to me that it would lead to this, to doing something like that. So, there's so many, and then how do you deal with that, right? How do you deal with people, it's not just, like I said, it's not just like in education, but how do you deal with people using chatbots inappropriately? Like what are the consequences? Like that person did that. What is the consequence of doing that when the person actually wasn't kidnapped? You caused a lot of fear. The person didn't bring the person any money. So then there's no money exchange, like just the fear alone of someone having to receive that conversation. But now what's the consequences of those things happening? is there one? So.
No, I agree with you 100%. I mean, AI from the very get-go has been loaded with duality. There's two sides to this. Mattia brought it up, you brought it up. I mean, it's the same thing, you know, on one side, this could be used to change our education system, really overhaul it. You know, if you look at our education system and why we do what we do it because of Horace Mann in 1840. You know, I mean, that's why we have grades. That's why we do what we do. Higher ed goes back to 1663 in the Harvard model. I mean, there's a lot of reasons that we did it then that maybe we don't need to do that moving forward. You know, we've always struggled with the kids that are different. You know, we've always struggled with kids that have autistic problems or slower kids or really, really bright kids. In terms of the system itself. So there's wonderful opportunities on one side of this. And then there's what you talked about. You know, there's a very scary side of this that currently is unregulated. You know, we all heard Anthony Bourdain, when he'd been dead for however long, talk to us in the movie, you know, and there's no regulation on that now in terms of reveal. So, yeah.
It's a whole new world, isn't it? I mean, I have a feeling that some of these internet influencers are going to go out of business. They'll be replaced by bots that are owned by China or something. Who knows? I mean, it's crazy. Shall we go to the last question? Then we can open it up to the rest of our audience here as well. Let me share my screen for the last question. So, how can the potential or over-reliance on technology and reduction in human interaction and social skills development, which may hinder success in the workforce, be addressed when using AI chatbots in education? It's a good question. We've touched on some of these areas already. Does this stimulate any other thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, there's one. It's probably that we have an over-reliance on technology in general anyway, because those of us are old enough to remember we can actually hold a conversation. And you notice with different generations that it's more and more difficult. Some people will only text, for example. You can see some people who are walking with their friends texting each other. And I wonder about things like that. I've seen families together and they're all on a phone texting. So some of the over-reliances are disturbing. And I think those are some of the things that we ought to be able to try to counter and move against, because this is another one of those that we can get over-reliant on. And we have to guard against that, to say, you know, here are some really good skills. If business, you can't talk, you're dead. You have to be able to communicate and you have to be able to converse. And I know this being an introvert myself, and I'm also have to speak and also do things that are speaking skills. So in the business world, you definitely need these kinds of things, and educators need to be telling students that, you know, whatever you have, a piece of paper or a reliance on a chatbot or anything like that, that's not going to help you at all. You really need to be able to have what they call the soft skills, because you need to be able to relate to people. You need to be able to understand people. You have to empathize. And there are all kinds of skills and qualities that make you very successful in business. Some of the most reserved individuals and the most introverted individuals are extraordinarily successful in business, because they don't talk so much, but they listen very carefully and they actually hear what other people are saying to them. And that's why they're successful.
There's certainly a dopamine rush when you use a chatbot, that especially if you use something like a conversational chatbot, like a companion chatbot, who is able to converse with you, and it becomes addictive, and that could be a real problem. So I know with Replica, there's some controversy over people building like very deep relationships with their chatbots. One of the things as teachers and as instructors that we can do is, when we're incorporating chatbot use, is to, again, kind of focus it as a tool and not a replacement for actual sort of thinking or actual interaction. And so using collaborative sort of settings to use the chatbot together, kind of help evaluate, maybe when we're looking at those weaknesses, we're doing that in pairs or we're doing that in smaller groups, so that we do continue to work together and continue to have those soft skills of being able to collaborate.
Excellent. Mick, I find it hard to believe you were an introvert.
I ask people this sometimes, and I ask them just out of curiosity, what do you think? You're an introvert or an extrovert? And a lot of people say extrovert. I'm not. I'm an extraordinarily private person and I'm an introvert. But what I'm saying is that knowing the kinds of things that you need to do in order to be successful, that was the drive for me. So yeah, I'm actually very introverted and very private, but it's a skill that can be developed. And what I'm saying to the educators, of course, make sure the students know this, that you actually have to be able to interact with people, real simple, honest conversation. And I think the group work might be helpful too, because other than that, they're going to be texting one another and that doesn't help. You have to be able to interact and listen to what people are saying.
I wonder if any of you worked for a company or a school or whatever where they had a no technology day. It's like there's a casual Friday. Maybe we should go back to having a no technology day. Does anybody do that or have any familiarity with the places that do that?
A quick story here. I spent some time in the Silicon Valley, and it's very, very interesting. A lot of folks need to know this because there are schools in the Silicon Valley that actually do that, and they have extraordinary limited amounts of technology that the teacher controls, and that's the only technology that's in the classroom. And what's very interesting, a really, really high percentage of those parents, for example, that are placing their children in these schools are actually tech workers. So you name all the big places, LinkedIn, Apple, Google, these are parents who are deciding to put their child or children in a non-technology environment. That's very interesting.
That is. Anybody else have any examples to share? I'd like to open it up for our general audience. I think Doug is available there to unmute you or allow you to be unmuted if you want to chime in or ask, place a question into the chat.
I want to say, kind of going off of what Dr. Mick said there, it's funny because I was teaching an intro to computer class and I had a discussion with my students about what was addictive technology, what that kind of meant to them. And so it's interesting because a lot of people say I don't look my age, and I don't mind telling, I'll be 50 in August. And so when I had that conversation with them, it just amazed me because I am very old school and will leave my phone at home and it does not bother me. But for them, it's like that technology is so important. You hear stories of like parents taking kids' technology and now they want to harm the parent, or I heard someone say, oh yeah, me and my mom are in the same house and I just text her or she texts me, she's downstairs, I'm upstairs. And I'm just like, yeah, but you can't just yell upstairs or yell downstairs, so it's very interesting to see how technology is, what the definition of addictive is from generation to generation. And so I think that definition just changes over time, depending on who you're talking to. And so I think that would kind of go back along the same lines with AI, right? So one person may find it, that it can be very addictive, where somebody else may not. They may look at it as, I use it. And when y'all start talking about it, then I started thinking about, am I using it too much in my email, right? Am I using it too much to draft these emails because I, feel like I have this weak writing style? So am I using it too much? Although I do read back through, and also I also use Grammarly And so it wants to correct the chat GPT, right? But I'm constantly reading, putting my own words into it, saying, don't correct that. I wanted to say this exact same thing, but it still makes me think about, am I overusing the technology? And I think that's just something to be aware of for anybody that wants to use it, not just our students, but even ourselves. If we're, like Rod, you said you use it for your newsletter. I think that's what you said. But, like if we think about it, like, are we also at a point where we may be overusing it because, let's see what else it does. Let's see what, how I can break it. So I think it's just a real interesting point. I mean, a very interesting side of the addiction piece of that.
I didn't want to give you the impression that I was using ChatGPT to write my whole newsletter. That's at least not yet. But what I am doing is incorporating and demonstrating how it works, and I'll use it as a way to prompt me to answer some questions and so forth. So, and I do try to check the references. So far, they've been pretty accurate. So it's like this. In fact, I remember the name of the video I'd listened to. It was an interview of Gregory Hinton. That's his name. If you look him up, he's London-based, or he was. I think he's in Canada now. But he said, these like ChatGPT is like we're inventing an idiot savant intelligence. They really don't know when they're telling the truth or not. So we have to train them, and we're not there yet where we can totally trust them. That's for sure.
I know we're supposed to be talking about negatives, but there's a positive side to all this too. I was talking to somebody this week who uses ChatGPT to write marketing clips. They have a podcast and they get out there, and she thought it was wonderful. She's like, I don't have to spend the time to do that. I can get on to do so many other things because I don't have to focus on writing all these little tweets and all these little things that I'm putting out there and, lining up on Zapier and blah, 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 blah. I mean, to me, that doesn't make her any less of an effective marketer. In fact, it's making her more effective because
probably increasing productivity,
the redundant, anyway.
Yeah.
I think
Along
there's.
those,
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry.
so, along those lines, a coworker of mine, her husband is a lawyer, and they were saying a lot of what they do is just like boilerplate work. So something like this can really allow that to be done in an automated way very quickly. So it can save the client a lot of money. It can produce more income for an organization because it can crank out more work, and people can work on higher order or more important projects than creating these boilerplate documents. But it might also get rid of like paralegals or something like that. So I think there's those risks as well. But I did want to bring up something about using like soft skills. And I think about how people code switch and have different languages with different people and different groups of people, and how you may, not just in education, but we might look at somebody's, how does this address the fact that we use different languages to say the same thing at different times? In education, we might be, speaking a certain way because we're expected to. But when we go off into our corner to do our work, we might be speaking in a different way. So does that then seem inauthentic, or it wasn't our work because we used a language that is more natural to myself or my group of people? So I'm just curious how consistent we can have responses or communications with something like this, and be our authentic selves, or not, depending on the environment we're in. We have to be inauthentic. There's also an opportunity for people who are in education who might be doing, going to a library. You're in an underserved community and you're looking up for information on housing resources. So you go to the library, you go to Google, and it gives you a whole bunch of websites that you don't know how to use. So this could be a great opportunity to actually get you the answers you need, not based on language you use, and the way where you grew up in slang or different terminologies you use. So you may or may not get the resources you need. Might be shifted to certain types of resources for marginalized communities because you're using a language, speech that identifies with that community. Unfortunately, with that be to further divide us.
Hey, everybody, this is Lou Strickoff. It's good to see some colleagues I remember from the past.
I remember you.
Great minds here. I know quite a few of them. And the addition of these other geniuses, and I'm not kidding, you guys are keeping the tradition of the organization going and cutting edge. You know, it was always about, we had to talk about the latest stuff. So you're definitely talking about the latest stuff. As you know, I'm retired and, you know, not involved anymore, unless it has to do with pickleball or boats or, you know, at the beach. So that's what it's all about now. So it's great seeing the organization going. I hope you can keep going. You know me, it's all about the sponsors. So love to hear what's going on with that if we got any. All righty. Good to
I'm
hear
glad
from
you
you.
attended, Lou. Good to see you.
Yeah, I mean, AI is all around us. If someone's not even in the game anymore, it's scary, but it reminds me of the early days of, you know, the internet itself. And when this all started, there was that whole conversation on the other side. What are the negative things that are going to happen in the future? What is this technology that can really like help us? What's the dark side? And it seems like it's just moving and moving into the dark side with, you know, just kids, my little babies who are here. Actually, today you may hear them screaming. Grandkids, they know the TV control. They know they want your cell phone. This is all they want from you. I mean, they're so attuned to this stuff, even when they're first, I don't know, coming out like 1 year old, they want that TV controller and they want the phone. I mean, we always had that other side that we had to be conscious of. What is it going to do to our kids? And how is it going to screw up society? And everything's been like 50-50 all down the line with all this crap that's come by. So this one's scary though, because you start thinking about Terminator and all that stuff, Rise of the Machines. But you know, bots fighting wars. I mean, it's happening right now. So it's insane. Good luck and fight the good fight, everybody. All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lou.
Good to see you. And yeah, there's some good articles that Laura put out there. An interesting looking article about how to use to tweak ChatGPT to give you what you're looking for. So some great resources out there. Alicia, I see yours. Really appreciate that. Anybody else have any closing comments? Looks like we're getting near the end here. We don't want to keep people from dinner, perhaps.
Well, I'm going to do a Bobby, which is focus on strengths a little bit from weaknesses. So we've been talking about the dangers of, you know, the different ways that people perceive bias and where your positionality sort of impacts what you consider bias or different experiences. And I think the flipping that to the positive is that in education, it creates an interesting opportunity when you know somebody has a different perspective than you to have those conversations in class, because we're all kind of saying we need to teach students about how to critically reflect on AI and think about the data privacy implications and think about the ethics and think about what's true versus the bot just saying authoritatively or confidently. And so when we're teaching students, we have the opportunity to build in social learning. So if they're doing things in pairs and looking at the chatbots in pairs and they have to talk it out, that's an opportunity to still teach those social skills. So, you know, you could say like no texting each other the answers. You have to actually talk and develop your soft skills while you're thinking about the hard skills of how do you use AI. So that I think is an interesting opportunity, because I've been really enjoying this conversation and the Monday conversation because we have such different perspectives represented, and that makes it interesting. It makes it worth having a conversation. If we were all coming from the same perspective, it would be pretty boring.
It's anything but boring these days, I think. Any other closing comments from our guests too, as well as our panel?
I think Doug has a good one in chat, and he says, does it change our perspective from looking for an answer or the answer to exploring a process? And I think it does. You know, I think that's one of the things that we've had to adjust to with the internet is where the information is, and more, that's where you go for the answer, right? And now we're moving one step even beyond that. You know, you're going to ChatGPT for the answer, where the knowledge is stored and known, which means if you're an attorney, you don't have to keep all of that stuff in your head that's redundant. So it's kicking, to me, it's an opportunity for us to kick education up a few levels. You know, so, you know, the knowledge, yes, comprehension, yes, but you don't have to store all of that in our limited memory, which we know, you know, cognitive load is limited in human beings. It's the way we're built. And gives us a chance to kind of go up the scale and do more things.
I don't know how many of you have been, we've all experienced these little bots, you know, websites, which are pre-ChatGPT, and they often gave really terrible answers. I helped to implement something like that for our at the University of the Sciences, and you know, it was really just an if-then kind of thing, and you have a branching, and it was pretty terrible. But I can see that customer service is going to really be improved by this sort of technology. That's on the good side. And on the bad side, I think a lot of people are going to lose their jobs because, you know, right now the call centers, they may be in India or, you know, there was a story, I forget where I read it, maybe it was the New York Times, talking about this sort of thing, how this young woman from India, you know, escaped her very poor, you know, rural family, came to this country to do a job that could be easily replaced by these technologies. And she's going to end up probably going back. And you know, she was making pittance in India. And when she came here, she could send, you know, at least half of her income back to India and support the family. So this may have wide-ranging implications for, you know, social ills, you know, throughout the world, not just here.
That was something I was going to bring up also, was the loss of jobs. But then I thought about in education, what a great opportunity to then teach beyond those type of job skills. Right. So now it's a great time for us to say, okay, so with the use of this, with the use of any AI product, here are some jobs that may not be available in the future. So and that does not need to start in college. That actually needs to start in high school, right? Because you have students that graduate from high school and don't go any further, right? And so those may be the jobs that they would normally get with just a high school diploma, that now they won't have that opportunity. So what a great way for us to use AI to teach the students the importance of, having these other skills that would be used in another, in these jobs. But now let's teach them something else and show them, okay, these type of jobs will may not be around in 3 years, right? When you graduate from high school, these jobs may not be here, these type of jobs. And also knowing this, that some of our students just don't want to go on and further their education. Maybe they're just not a strong student and they don't want to go into college or receive a trade, right? So how do we now encourage them to go to do something else?
Yeah, I may have mentioned this on Monday, but in my interview with Brian Alexander, he's a futurist in education. He said, well, there might be jobs like bot wrangler, or well, there are already courses in how to write prompts. So you could be an expert prompt writer, although that can be taken over by AI too.
What is this? What if this is a threat to like the large companies like Amazon? What if this democratizes business so that the small person who has a hobby of making soap at home is able to understand how to use a spreadsheet to track inventory and do some basic accounting they weren't able to do before. So now they can have a specialty soap making business, on the scale that fits their needs and the needs of their customers. This could help them market. So maybe more people can have their own like little cottage industries and take control back from an Amazon, which everybody seemed to have gone to during the pandemic. So maybe it's an opportunity to disrupt some of that.
I'm sure there's going to be a lot of disruption happening.
Yeah.
I'm concerned. Well, not concerned. I guess I'm a stockholder. I have some Google stock, and their bread and butter are ads. And when you're directed right to the answer and not have to go through, page after page of links, looking for what you want, but some AI tells you this is exactly what you need and want, I think that's going to have a big hit on their income.
Well, that's one of the threats is when we get to that day, that there's going to have to be advertisement sort of just woven in through free chats. At some point it's going to have to happen because people have to pay for access somehow. And of course, we're already paying by giving them our information and by giving feedback. But yeah, it's going to happen where that product placement's going to just be woven in. But I really like the idea of Doug. I really like this. You can actually be an entrepreneur a little bit more easily now because you have an assistant. You have someone who can help you analyze data. You have someone who can help with marketing. So that's something that actually does help with equity a bit and kind of levels the playing field.
Yeah, you've come a long way from Clippy.
Yes.
Hopefully they don't bring back a Clippy.
I would love a Clippy bot. It'd be so much fun. Just pops up. Hi.
I'm sure we're going to be seeing all kinds of bots we can add.
Well, especially with Microsoft. That's right.
I guess there aren't any more questions. Are there? comments or statements? So I just want to let everybody know we're next week we're taking off, and then we're starting again for 2 more sessions on the 24th, same time, and the 27th. So those will be the last 2. So looking forward to having the panels here again, as well as who attended. Great comments and resources. So,
Well, it's been fun. I have a
yeah.
hard stop. I have to get offline to interview a potential cat sitter for when we go away. So nice
Good.
meeting all of you,
Absolutely.
and good to see you again. So I'm gonna sign off for now.
Thank you,
Have a great
everybody.
week.
Great seeing
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you very much.